welcome back. And it's time now to get into our first panel discussion of the day, where our experts will deliberate on how companies today can empower their HR function to make a significant impact on business growth, on talent management, employee engagement, and overall organizational success. I'm very pleased to invite my guest on this panel. The topic is charting a growth path for HR in fast growing businesses to drive impact. We're being joined by Roma Bindru, CHRO Zepto, Loli Vadaseri, CHRO Datamatics, and Anuradha Kedia, co-founder the Better India. Welcome all of you all to this wonderful power packed panel where we are going to deliberate on some of the ways how HR can be more effective and maybe find out a roadmap for for the HRs to bring that business impact. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Pallavi.
All right, let me start off with Roma. Thank you, Roma, for your time and agreeing to be part of this panel. So, to begin with, what is that one factor you think can really make HR more impactful than it is in its current capacity? How do they have more say in business decisions? So, what is your view, Roma?
See, I think HR is, we tend to sort of club HR all together, right? But in every organization, HR is different, right? It depends upon the organization, how open they are, and what their need is for the moment, right? So, irrespective, I think understanding your business to the T and being completely cognizant of the numbers that matter to the business is very, very critical. And I think that's not just HR, that's true for any function that wants to make an impact. How does whatever it does, how does it feature in the multiple lines of PNL is something that any business lead should anyway understand. And I think more so for HR because we have quite a few critical lines in the PNL. So I think understanding the metrics that the business is driving and understanding very clear cut line of sight to those metrics as a function is something that HR should focus on, irrespective.
Wonderful. I think that was some wonderful opening notes from Roma. Lolly, I want to bring you in here and maybe if you could share some insights or specific strategies, or initiatives that Datamatics has implemented to empower the HR to drive business growth.
Right. Thank you, Pallavi. Pallavi, at Datamatics, we follow essentially a people first culture. So people are at the heart of the business. Being a typical ITES, organization, our philosophy has largely been that we take care of our people and people take care of the business. So every initiative is around making sure that people are at the core. And I would say that this is something which has really reaped us huge dividends because our employee engagement levels have been in the range of about 89 to 92% over the last several years. And this is also directly reflected in our client engagement levels, which range between 91 to 93%. HR has played definitely a pivotal role in ensuring a culture of ownership, a culture of high performance, okay, to really ensure that we get a fast paced growth. And therefore, as a strategic partner to business, HR essentially plays the role of not just being a strategic advisor or a problem solver, but also as a mentor and coach. And I think it's very crucial, just to add on to what Roma said, when you are in the people business, okay, you are at the heart of everything to do with not just understanding business as well as the business leaders, but really making sure that that is what really ensures that you get a seat at the table, right? So at Datamatics, I think every initiative, be it the people development function, there's a lot of emphasis. I take pride in saying that 75% of our leaders are actually homegrown. So we've got some very, very closely, curated leadership development programs. Leadership coaching is again something which is emphasized on in a big way. So HR essentially has been the glue that really binds the teams and the organization as a whole together. And I think that is something which has really helped us reap rich dividends.
Well, thank you for those thoughts and sharing the philosophy which Datamatics follow. I want to, ask a question to Anuradha here. Being the co-founder of the Better India, how do you see HR contributing to both social impact as well as business growth? And also, it would be wonderful if you could share some examples, Anuradha.
Absolutely. Thank you first of all for inviting me in this wonderful session where I get to speak about one of my favorite functions in organization, which is the HR, as we call it, the people and culture function. Um, in a social impact organization like the Better India, the people really are our team members are the true agents of change and growth. Okay, are you able to hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please carry on.
So, for the HR to really be able to impact function to be able to imbibe the very culture of the organization itself, right? So, to keep the people in our organizations motivated, aligned, and engaged is absolutely necessary because a lot of people join just for the very mission and vision of the organization, and they are here for creating their own impact. They join out of passion. And to keep that passion alive becomes a very critical role that the HR plays. So there are several different which the HR team, tries to keep that passion alive. They one thing I would have to say is that they have to lead by example. I'll give you an instance from our experience. As an extension of our sustainable living philosophy, we had decided to make our office zero waste. So it would not have been possible without the tremendous support and alignment of the HR team who came together to make it happen, right? From procurement to facility management and everything that it takes, right? In terms of engagement and motivation, our HR team organizes initiatives like the Changemaker series, where we invite the unsung heroes that we cover at the Better India to share their inspiring journeys with our team members. Those are just incredibly inspiring moments. We also regularly share the impact stories across the organization to make people aware of how our work is changing lives. That is important since not everybody works directly at the forefront of the impact, right? There are a lot of employees who are providing support quietly from behind the scenes. So it becomes extremely critical that they also feel that they are a part of a social impact organization. So
Right.
these are some of the areas. And when it comes to business growth, recruitment is a key area that is covered by HR, where hiring growth-oriented, enthusiastic candidates who are good cultural fits can do wonders for the team's success. Right? By establishing the right recruitment standards and processes and
I'll come
strategies.
back to you, Anuradha. I think there's still a lot of lag, and we could see the comments coming in. So this is also a reminder to our audiences. If you have any questions for our experts, you can use the chat box section, that feature to ask your questions. We can already see the emojis of a lot of thumbs up coming in. We'll try and take a few audience questions as well. But as we're talking of HR's image, also somewhere we are restricting them to the guardians of culture and the keepers of culture. But Roma, I want to come to you, and you were also mentioning about the business aspect of it. So maybe if I ask you that in a high growth organization like Zepto, how can HR leaders ensure that they are aligned with companies growth goals and objectives besides the regular functions that they are expected to do so, because that has been the image since so many years? What are your views, Roma?
Okay. See, I think two things. I think one, I'm just taking a trail from what Anuradha also mentioned, that the guidelines that need to be created, the culture that is needed for growth, is a joint responsibility. HR is an enabler, whether we like it or not, right? HR is an enabler. For every employee, eventually in this world, manager ends up becoming the god, right? So most people leave bad managers, they don't leave bad organizations, right? So it's eventually that relationship is something which is sacrosanct, so HR can enable, and hence this is a joint ownership that needs to be understood completely. But to be very clear, I think be it a high growth org, be it a low growth org, HR strategy comes purely from business strategy. There is no HR strategy without a very clear understanding of what the business needs are, what their wants are, what are they focusing on. If the organizations are open enough having a role to play even in creation of a business strategy or the opportunities to take is a part of the the role that HR has to play. But there are organizations where sometimes business doesn't have HR on the table to create that growth path, while we keep voicing the need for that. But at that time the HR strategy has to be completely derived from the needs of the business, right? So what, for example, if it's a high growth org, what does high growth mean? Is it purely about, let's say, increasing monetization? So then you'll build that team. Is it about expansion on ground? Then you'll build that team. Is it about maybe some successive rounds that need to be led in a high growth VC funded setup? So then your requirements are very different. So understanding the needs of the business, crafting your HR strat in line for the entire employee life cycle is something which anyway HR does. How do we do it a lot more actively with clear metrics to say, okay, these were the overall organization, this was the overall organization strat, they were the organizational OKRs, this is what we are deriving from it, and hence HR is going to impact in this fashion for each of the OKRs that business has, right? Or most of the OKRs that business has. I think that's the way to go about it.
Great points there. Lolly, want to add something to what Roma said, and then I'll come to the next question.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pallavi. So I think, I completely resonate with what Roma has just shared. And just to add to what she just said, I think at the end of the day, for any organization, and in today's fast-paced, kind of crazy business environment, it's as VUCA as it gets, right? Every day is a new day. So one of my favorite phrases is, "There's never a dull day in paradise." So when you are in that kind of space, I think what is really key is that HR has also got to keep pace with everything that's happening with in the dynamic business world, right? And the only way to do it is really have your ears to the ground, know what's happening, be completely clued in to every single change that like she rightly said, if there is no business strategy, where does HR strategy come in? So it's about constantly seeing how you can get that alignment done, be completely flexible, be completely open to knowing that there could be challenges, and how one can be as nimble footed, so to speak. And I think for HR, I do say this, that I think at the heart of it is to be compassionate at all times. HR in many ways is really the conscious keeper of the organization. So how are we constantly aligning that, everything that we do is with, having our heart in its right place, because everything will have an impact, and the impact will be people. So it is about seeing that how we can constantly see that alignment happening. And I think when you always do things with the right intent, the outcome has got to be in the right manner.
Well, you already answered my question, but I'll maybe tweak the question that I had in mind. You did mention about how HR leaders can ensure that they are able to align their initiatives with the business objectives. In your own personal experience, have you ever faced any such challenge while you were trying to, bridge that gap, or maybe align the HR initiatives with the business objectives? Any anecdote that you would like to share with our audiences here?
Yeah. So, in today's day and age, when there is a constant war for talent, right? And it's about getting talent at the right time and at the right place, right? So it's about making sure the right time, the right quality of talent to come on board. What you typically, I mean, if I were to share an anecdote, I would say that there are situations where suddenly you have like a huge number of requisitions which have come in, right, to make sure that the people come in. And it's about, you may not get always the and we all know that today, with most organizations have changed their notice periods in such a way that many a times to get lateral talent, it does become difficult to get talent at the right time, right? So what we do is, one of the instances where we partner with business to make sure that we are not always relying on just key experienced talent coming in, but how can we nurture talent internally to have a fast paced growth for our internal talent through learning and development interventions. And I think that in a way paved way for, so many a times business will many a time come back and say, oh no, I want experienced talent because they will be We are just ready to plug and play. So how we can go back to business and say, you know what, we can do this, and it's just about investing the little bit of extra time. So it's and I think this particular initiative of actually creating an academy paved rich dividends for us, right? So we were able to convince business and tell them that, you know, this is how we can go about doing it. And initially, while there may have been a little bit of skepticism, eventually the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So when they're able to see that it can translate, and then, you know, they're ready to buy into all your ideas in future too.
Well, it actually resonates with the philosophy, Lolly, that you were mentioning at the start of the conversation. Since Anuradha is back here, I want to pose a question to Anuradha also. Today, when, remote work and flexibility is becoming increasingly important, how has the Better India adapted its HR policies and practices, and probably how do you see the role of HR, in meeting these changing workforce expectations? What are your views on that?
That's a great question, Pallavi, especially given the current times. So, the Better India recognized the growing importance of remote work and flexibility in today's workforce landscape quite early on, and made significant adjustments to its HR policies and practices, with a strong emphasis on leveraging HR tech to facilitate this transformation. So I'll give you a few examples, right? One, we have invested a lot in flexible work arrangements. So while we introduced flexible work arrangements that allow employees to work from anywhere at all, but also on the flip side, recognizing the toll that remote work can sometimes take on mental health of employees, we have also enabled people to catch up with their colleagues in the same city and choose to work out of co-working spaces on the days of their choice. So there are multiple angles to the same problem that you need to consider, right? The second aspect is around HR tech integration. So the Better India has invested in HR tech solutions that have played a vital role in ensuring a high level of productivity and a frictionless work environment in this remote setting. Right? So at TBI, we believe in automating mundane tasks to inspire high creativity for the complex problem solving among our people. So from your basic HRMS portal to the CRMs to an advanced ATS system, we deploy a high level of technology to manage the everyday tasks. Right? And while most of us have evolved and learned to make full use of the technology at our disposal, the one gap we sometimes notice is the lack of personal touch that these tools have. Right? So for instance, a one-on-one pulse connect with the HR team is appreciated by the employees far more than an automated weekly survey through the HRMS portal. So it is very important to find that right balance, right? In addition to that, introduction of well-being initiatives, digitizing and enabling a smooth onboarding that's completely digital and remote, and also ensuring that we have regular employee feedback mechanisms through which we can assess the effectiveness of our remote work policies and practices. So all of these help us to continuously be on top of workforce preferences and expectations in this ever evolving world, and understand where the future of work is moving and be able to adapt.
Thank you, Anuradha, for those thoughts. And since we've been talking about employee engagement and different initiatives, Lolly spoke about the catch-ups for people who are, staying in a similar locality. Some wonderful initiatives. So, Roma, if you could also shed light on how Zepto has fostered employee engagement and talent management to support its growth. I won't use the word rapid because there might be, different meanings or nuances to it. But what is your view on employee engagement?
No, I think first of all, the key to growth of any organization is talent retention. I think acquisition is easier, but not to have a leaky bucket and ensure that they stay, they become advocates of the work that you do, and they're completely convinced, engaged about what is needed, as their purpose and an organizational purpose. I think is the key theme. So talent retention is practically the only job of HR if you have to encapsulate it in that form, and hence engaging with them throughout is important. And when we talk about engagement, somehow people so, it gets restricted to those visuals of maybe rangoli making and a Diwali celebration that that people think of, but that's not true. And I think we are way past that image. Engagement today is right from the offer is out. There is a pre-engagement that happens to the post-engagement, to how you take them through the 30, 60, 90-day cycle. How do you ensure that they're getting feedback in time? You don't have to wait for a year to know what they did wrong in April of last year. So engagement is that constant conversation which is give and take to ensure that we are enabling them on what is needed on a daily basis, so that they are the most productive, which makes you happy, which makes them happy, right? So everything in that gamut is engagement, right? So, and if done well, it's like if all steps are taken well, mostly employees will be retained. Now, you have to be mindful that there are many things beyond your control, but mostly employees would be retained if you get them right information at the right time, right transparency, give them clarity on their moves as a talent, and demonstrate that you are listening to them. And a lot of people run multiple surveys. We listen, there are beautiful dashboards made, but action plans and demonstrated action on what have you done and what needs to be improved, the simple fact of we are listening to you and we are acting as per what you need. These two affirmations are very, very important. It's human more than employee, right? So I think that's what truly defines us as an organization. Zepto has been created with that culture to be a listening org, when we'll constantly work with our stakeholders on their needs. We'll constantly work with our employees on our needs, and we have our own constraints, right? We are a 2-year-old organization. It's a startup. There are constraints on cash, so you always will have that frugality mindset. But even with it, there's so much that we can do. And I think that's what we get right. Have career conversations on time, have performance conversations on time, let people understand what they are getting rated, assessed on, and why. Do it sooner. And if there are gaps, get into performance improvement mode a lot more, rather than saying later that it's not working. These statements don't work, especially in a market wherein the war for talent is real. You have to make it work. So give everything to make it work. And I think for us, we run cycles which are twice a year. We have catch-ups which happen every quarter. We have bonuses which are half of which is paid out every half a year. We run cycles on promotions practically within 9 months of a person joining. So the moment they complete one performance cycle, you have one performance rating, you are eligible for moving to a different level. We have IJPs, roles are openly shared, and anybody can apply for roles across the organization. So we are creating pathways and giving that accessibility. After that, we are very clear that we have hired professionals, we have hired adults, and taking that action in presence of information is something which is their accountability. And I think that's something that's worked very well for us. We are not a very dictative org. We've kept a lot of things very fluid. What you wear, your timings, we practically have 11 to 4 as a core working hour, but we are a work from office organization. That's something we are very clear about, right? So we have created a lot of freedom. We've given a lot of access to information. We have created multiple levels of transparency. We have Ask Me Anything sessions with founders. We have town halls which happen every month. We have functional town halls which happen every 2 months. Multiple connects, reviews that happen every month for every function. So there's a lot of visibility that the org has on every metric. How is it going up, down, and where is that opportunity to quickly adapt, pivot, and make an impact? And I think that transparency across is something that the talent wants today. That engagement across is something that the talent wants today. They know what they want. They are adults, as I said, and we have a lot of people who are pretty young, right? So we will keep asking us, how is it working with younger population? I think they are very, very purposeful and driven, but they need clarity and they don't need mollycoddling. As long as you're able to give them that comfort, and have that open line of communication, build trust and demonstrate action, I think you're good.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we saw a lot of heart emojis when you talked about the listening part, which is actually the key of listening and then taking action. So I think some wonderful thoughts coming in from Roma. I want to go back to Lolly and maybe know some of the best practices. You already did share a lot, what you do at Datamatics, but still, if you want to summarize the things, the practices that you think are crucial for HR teams in high growth organizations which is important to succeed and drive impactful outcome, which is actually the core of our
Right.
conversation today.
Yeah, Pallavi, I think, both Roma and Anuradha have shared some amazing insights. But, just to add on to what they said, I'd essentially say, the role of HR in today's day and age, and probably for times to come, is about how can we, what is it that we are doing to create a spring in the step of an employee when he or she comes to work on a Monday morning. I think that essentially encapsulates, are we really creating an environment where people feel that, oh, I'm excited about coming to work on a Monday morning. And when I say work, whether it is physical workplace or remotely, right? So a lot of initiatives that we do at Datamatics is largely centered around making sure that you've created an environment of trust and openness. Okay, people can come and talk about, whether they're not happy with the coffee, and something as innocuous as coffee in the cafeteria is something which needs to be changed, to something as major as, they're not happy with the way they have been either given their feedback, or it could be just about anything. So I think having a listening ear, making sure, our employee engagement initiatives have all been centered around that any person who has a concern can talk to either the HR business partner, or with, their immediate manager. People are encouraged to speak and voice their concerns. We say that this is a forum for you, so you don't have to necessarily wait. Feedback on their, each one has a very well defined KPI, right? Their KRA KPIs are defined right at the start, so people know what is expected out of them, what is it that they need to do to deliver. There are tons of fun activities through the year. So, like Roma rightly said, many a times it doesn't mean that you have to have, loads of budget to really, one of the questions I saw was, how can you really do engagement activities with low budget? I think the intent is important. The intent is to make people. So, we do a lot of events, like we've got this Datamatics Got Talent, which we do every year. We've got our recognition programs, which are, done in a way that the person truly feels like he's the star of the. So it's about what we say, how we have conveyed the message. Events like the Datamatics Premier League, which is the cricket tournament, the annual cricket tournament. So it's about getting people together, giving people opportunities to really express themselves, and most importantly, I think, creating a culture where they can learn and grow. Our learning and development interventions have made sure that we have people on a fast track growth. A coaching intervention which we launched a year back has really helped us work closely with the leaders, not just the first time managers, middle management, and also the senior leaders. And we've been able to see a transformation journey. Mid-sized companies like us, many a times, may not be able to afford external trainers to do all the programs. So we've got a L&D team which actually focuses on building soft skills for folks through the various functions that they're in. And I think that has really gone a long way in helping people grow and scale up.
Having some wonderful inputs that came in this conversation. And before we move on to the Q&A, because we do have some time for taking audience questions, and I could see a lot of questions people have posted for our panelists. So maybe, Anuradha, just a closing comment. Any advice that you would like to offer to HR professionals, especially in fast-growing businesses who are actually looking to create a bigger impact, but maybe they are stuck in some rut, or maybe they have some apprehensions? Any word of advice?
I think both Lolly and Roma have given us such amazing bits of advice, and I would say pearls of wisdom. To sum it up, I would have a few thoughts around, from my experience of working very, very closely with our HR team at the Better India. The few aspects that we keep in mind always, one is to keep up with the ever evolving employee expectations and workplace management trends, because we have seen these changing at such a rapid rate, and I'm sure every organization, especially in the growth stage and startups, and all of us in this space, feel and see the trends changing like every few months, every couple of months. There's a complete shift in what are the expectations from the organization. So what we've learned over the years is to really be flexible and adapt to new ideas, And if you can't connect with the workforce, then you cannot motivate them. So it's extremely important to keep the communication channels open and make sure that you are available and you make an effort, not just passively available, but actively make an effort to connect with employees, to do regular check-ins, and to really, break the ice. Because a lot of times in the remote world today, new employees joining us, they're not uh, all that comfortable with the rest of the organization. So it's extremely important to help them integrate and break the ice across levels and everything, right? Another important aspect we've seen is to keep employee well-being as the top priority. Like each kind of working environment has its own set of unique challenges, whether remote, hybrid, or in office environment. So it's extremely important for the HR team to be empathetic and plugged into the employees' needs. And lastly, I would say something that we always discuss, in our HR meetings, is to strive towards constant improvement. Right? It's very important for the teams, all of us, to really read as much as possible about the industry that we're managing, the people processes for. Social media is so full of amazing wisdom, the visionary leaders, and there's so much to learn from there. So it's very important to really stay on top of everything that's happening, to read, learn, and be a lifelong learner. I would say is very important for every HR team.
I think that's a wonderful takeaway. Roma, any one key takeaway that probably you want to highlight before we move on to the Q&A?
No, I think we've had a lot of points that have been discussed, but there are quite a few questions on how do we become better partners, business partners, right? And I would just say that hone your skill. So be an expert in HR. That's like a default. But like Anuradha also mentioned, you can be a business partner only once you know business. As simple as that. So if you want to be the best business partner, know your business, and you'll figure out through your skills, through your attitude, through your knowledge, how is it that you partner better. So just know your business, and that's like a that's the first word that comes before business partner, right?
Wonderful, wonderful. Lolly, one key takeaway from your end or any advice that you may want to share?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that, as a strategic partner, the role of HR is to constantly develop an HR plan which actually supports the overarching goals of the organization. So essentially, the role of HR is to make sure that every HR policy, every procedure, the question we can ask ourselves is, how are we helping create an engaging, high performance culture that drives the business forward? And I think HR leaders essentially need to stop looking themselves as just HR leaders, but rather as business leaders who specialize in HR. I think that essentially becomes very crucial for us to really play that determining role.
Wonderful. I think we can see a lot of questions, but considering the time constraint that we have, we will try to take up at least two. So there's a question particularly for Roma. And Roma, first of all, a lot of appreciations coming in for you in our comments box. So one question is by Snehita, and the question reads like, what are some of the key challenges pertaining to your role of being an HR head for a fast-paced new organization or startup? I think you addressed it, but if you want to address this for Sneha.
Hmm. Okay, see, a lot of startups don't even have HR when they begin. I'm being very honest. They start only with one form of HR, which is talent acquisition. So because they're becoming bigger, so most folks, if you see, they practically get a full-fledged HR team just before they want to go the IPO route. Before that, it's largely just the acquisition team, right? So I think uh, building credibility of the need of end-to-end HR is actually your first challenge, and that's not with employees, that's with the key leadership that you engage with, that's with your key stakeholders. So building that view of what HR can do if enabled, getting credibility and having a voice on the table, which with spine and substance both, I think that's the key challenge, because environment is pretty It's a difficult environment. There's a lot which is not structured. There's a lot which is VUCA. There's a lot which is hazy. Every day is a new day, like Lolly mentioned, right? So there's so much that's happening constantly. In that, ensuring that your craft doesn't drop, you're constantly engaging, you understand the power dynamics that are going around, and still build credibility of not just you as a person, but you as a function is something which is quite a bit of a task, right? So I think the what solves it, because while you've asked about challenges, I want to just give you a sense of what solves it. Also, is just to have that mindset of you had that there was this very interesting movie wherein I can't Finding Nemo ka second version, right? But it just mentioned there that when you don't know the way ahead, you have to just keep swimming. So just keep swimming. I think that's how you solve most challenges, is just to keep swimming. And, there'll be another day which is going to be a bit better.
Wonderful. So you have to keep that passion alive. Wonderful, Roma. And there's another question. Maybe Lol, you could answer this one. The question is by Abhi Rami. I don't know if the pronunciation is right. Question says, how frequently are the HR growth plans being evaluated and progressive plans made? Lolly.
So HR growth plans being evaluated is largely, I would say, either you can have a structure. It depends on the type of the organization that you're in, right? It could either be like, let's say, once in 6 months. It could also be sometimes as dynamic as the business needs vary. You've got to just be agile and nimble-footed. I think today the key for all of us as HR professionals is to be absolutely agile and adaptable to every single business change which is there, and see how we can become dynamic and make those corresponding changes, right? So I think it's the essences of being, I'd love to quote Martin Luther King, who says that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in terms of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in terms of challenge and controversy. And I think this is true for all business leaders, more so for HR, when you are constantly in this, where every single day is a new day, and you've got to see how you're getting aligned to, and at the same time being able to say what's, for example, when and I'll take a minute and share this, that as HR leaders, when you are in the boardroom and you are part of the decision making, your ability to stand up and say what should not be done, where everybody else may still be saying, this is what needs to be done. Like Roma rightly said, it's about having that substance and that metal to say, this is not what we need to do, and have that voice and stand up for it. Is many a times, there are path breaking decisions which get made when you actually are able to take some of those calls.
Wonderful. I think we do have a minute or so. So I'll read out another questions by Manoj, and any one of you can answer this one. Does your organization create case studies with life scenarios that enable solutions to diverse problems? Because leadership coaching dynamics may differ from organization to organization and market to market. So how do you go about it? It's a question by Manoj. So who wants to pick this one up? And rather, you want to give it a shot if your internet is, well connected.
Yeah, so Pallavi, could you repeat that, because I didn't really get the gist of it, or one
No
of
worries.
Laurie
Sure.
can-
I'll read out the question again. Does your organization create case studies with live scenarios that enable solutions to diverse the problems? Or probably say the way you tackle them. Yep.
Yes. All right. Yeah, that's a very good question, because we believe that documenting things is very important, right? So when you're talking about case studies, and you're talking about best practices, you really need to be able to have historical data for the HR to move forward. When you have see a change in hands, or you have HR who keeps building on top of our previous efforts, right? It's very important to create case studies, and we do that in a way that we capture a lot of the conversation having, the initiatives we're taking, and we also track the metrics of the initiatives we're taking. So we do not do case studies particularly in HR like we do in our impact case studies, but we make sure that we are capturing the metrics so that the HR can build on top of the previous efforts and be able to take things, try out new initiatives. And there is another thing I emphasize, is there should be room for failure. right? So when we are trying out new things and when we are pushing, everyone in the team, HR especially, to try out new initiatives, it is important to allow that space for failure and then be able to deliver great results, because you cannot get it right the first time every single time.
Wonderful. I think it just resonates with the sentiment which Ruma mentioned, that you have to keep going and keep swimming. And we had a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Lolly and Radha, Ruma, all of you, for sharing those personal insights and your own, bringing in your own experiences onto this panel. It was wonderful having all of you all on this particular power panel. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you,
And
Thank
Pallavi.
you so much.
Thanks.
And
Thanks
thanks
for
to
having
all
us.
our viewers as well who've shared some interesting questions. Due to a constraint in the time, we could only take up three, but you can always reach out to our panelists on their LinkedIn profiles, I believe. Thank you so much once again for being part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.